Before we get into the stories, I'm excited to announce I have a new channel called Monster Trail Cams. Here's a quick trailer for my new channel. The link is below. Monster Trail Cams is your ticket to the unseen and supernatural. Sourced from a vast network of mystery hunters worldwide, our channel reveals a collection of strange creatures and supernatural events that will leave you on the edge of your seat. From shadowy figures lurking in dense forests to inexplicable entities prowling under the cloak of night, each chilling clip peels back another layer of the world's untold mysteries. We release new episodes several times a week. Okay, now let's get to the stories. I live in a suburb of Los Angeles, right by a recognizable body of water, and I'll leave it at that. The lake was a nice place to swim and was a nice alternative to the salty ocean water and noisy beaches. I was a swimmer in high school and college before I joined the adult world and became a working stiff. It was a nice way to relax after a difficult day at the office. My town has a local legend. It was always a silly joke that no one took seriously. Since I was a kid, I was told by teachers and adults that the lake was home to a terrifying sea serpent. It used to terrify us as kids, but it became a draw to the lake. Tourists flocked to our small town, and it became an expensive resort town, hoping to see the serpent. The locals seemed to adopt this legend as enthusiastically as the tourists. My swim team cover layers had the same sea serpent decal as the touristy t-shirts. It was a point of pride for us. We're the sea monsters. We're ferocious and we swim faster than you. That is always what it was to me. A silly story and a campy mascot. Any actual query into the existence of this creature was always seen as kind of dumb. It was like a conspiracy theory, fun to talk about, but not that deep. Anyone who read that deep into this type of story was seen as a troll or making fun. Nothing too serious about it. The day of the incident was the hottest day on record. It was peak summer, and the humidity coming off the lake made it very uncomfortable to walk around. When I arrived at work, the unthinkable happened. The air conditioner was broken. It had to be 95 degrees at my desk. So a few co-workers and I found our way to our favorite nearby coffee shop and rubbed elbows around a tiny table. Wi-Fi cost money, so we all switched off paying for an hour. It was the best we could manage out of a miserable day. After what felt like an eternity, we made it to 5 in the evening. My co-workers wanted to get drinks, but I decided to head home. I had enough of being in such proximity to all of them. I really wanted some space. I was also dying for a swim. I said goodbye and went home. I changed into my bathing suit and got my bike out of the basement. I set out around the lake and made pretty good time. Slowly, the suburban sidewalks turned into a dirt path until I got to my usual swimming spot. It took some bushwhacking off the road, but the view of the city was beautiful, and it was a spot that was entirely unknown. I took my shirt off and left it by my bike and prepared for the swim. The water felt amazing on my legs, and I found myself immediately diving straight into the cool water. Relief flooded through me instantly. That thing I was craving all day felt so good. I finally cleared my head and started to relax. I bobbed up and down a bit in the water at first and then treaded water. I should have known something was off when I heard the frogs. Usually this was a quiet spot, but this evening it was like a symphony. It unnerved me slightly that they were so loud. It made something feel different about today. I don't know why, but the lake felt impossibly large, and I had never been smaller. Still, the water felt nice, and I was dying to get my blood flowing. I started to work on my crawl stroke until I was almost at the center of the lake. I treaded water and began to float on my back while I looked up at the stars. I closed my eyes for what must have been a second. I swear on my life something swam past me. I know well the sensation of a swimmer going past you, and this felt the same. But it was fast and big. I righted myself in the water and looked around. Nothing. All was quiet. I took this as my sign to head back to shore, so I began swimming again. While crawling, I took breaths under my right arm, just as I was taught. As I neared the shore, I saw something. It looked like a huge eye. The eye of a fish. In my panic, I flipped around and righted myself once again. Nothing on the surface. I looked down. Something gigantic, much larger than me, swam 20 feet under my legs. I looked hard in the water, trying to make out its features. Whatever it was, it stopped some distance away from me. It had a long body like a snake, and the head of a dragon I had seen on a television show. The water around me was still warm from how fast it passed me. Then in a moment it dipped down into the darkness of the lake. A few days have passed since then. I don't remember getting home, but I must have gone fast. I've been going about my days like normal, but no swimming. I began to do some reading to see if anyone had experienced what I had seen or anything like that. I grew up in a small town in Vermont. Actually, small town doesn't even begin to describe the desolation of the place. We had just under 600 people living there. It was so small that all the kids went to a consolidated high school half an hour north of our town. We shared the school with 2 other districts, ours being the smallest of the bunch. My crush wasn't from my town. She didn't even know my name. The classic unreachable type. On the honor roll and a place in student council, always smiling and surrounded by new friends. One day at lunch when I was a junior, one of my friends dared me to go over and ask her out. I wasn't going to at first, but then I realized that it didn't really matter if it went badly. They would probably forget I existed by the end of the day. And besides, it seemed exactly like the type of thing she would do if she was in my position. I started walking toward her lunch table, mentally cursing the friend who'd put me up to this, and I instantly started getting looks from the other people at his table. When I finally got to the table, she looked up at me and her smile eased my nerves a little. I introduced myself and asked her out in one gesture. I was awkward as hell, but trying to play it cool. There was a party that night, she said, and she said she would love it if I stopped by. I couldn't believe it and was beaming inside. My friends couldn't believe it either, but like they really didn't believe me. They started getting all in my head, telling me that it was a prank or something, like there was no way someone like her would want anything to do with me. I was pretty upset for the rest of the day about hearing that. My friends were such jerks. There was no way I wanted them killing my buzz that night. So I ducked out of school as soon as I heard the final bell. When I got home, the phone rang a few times, but I let all the calls go to the machine. I was sure it was just my lame friends trying to get a last-minute invite to the coolest party of the year. No chance. I hopped in my car around 7:45. The party started at 8, she said, and it was way over in the deepest part of their town. It was going to take at least 45 minutes to get there, so I figured I'd be fashionably late. My town was especially quiet that night. Some of the lights were on inside the pharmacy and the police station, but I didn't see any pedestrians on my way out. I don't think I even passed a car. Sure, it was a small town, but something was off. I saw that my gas was running low, so I pulled into the gas station before I left the town limits. I couldn't see anyone working in the store. The attendant was nowhere to be found. So I filled my tank myself and headed out. The back roads of this particular part of Vermont are eerie. Always have been. Driving them alone at night is its own sort of isolation. That night the town was empty, and I was literally the only one on the road. But I just knew I wasn't alone. I randomly got goosebumps all over my body like someone had dropped an ice cube down the back of my shirt. Fear rushed over me for a second before I came to. It was dark as hell out there, and I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to pass out. If I had gotten into an accident, who knows when someone would find me. I pulled off the road into a small dirt clearing on the outskirts of the woods. I put the car in park and kept the engine on, gripping the wheel tightly, trying to slow my heart rate. I needed some air. I got out of the car and put my hands on my knees. I was starting to feel normal. But then I stood up and arched my back in a stretch, and when I looked up at the sky, I gasped. I saw a dark mass above me, like directly above me, floating about 20 feet in the air. The night was incredibly dark, and the object blended almost seamlessly into the sky. The headlights of my car were just barely reflecting some of their glow onto the shiny black thing. My mouth went dry, and I stood there for a few moments as if I was made of stone. I was in shock. This thing was floating in midair. Something whirred from the flying thing, something mechanical. This was enough to wake me up, and I literally jumped back into my car. I poked my head out the window and looked up at the sky. The thing had now repositioned itself ever so slightly so that it hovered directly above my car. I stared at it for a long time, like I was in a trance. Then that cold ice cube feeling came back, but this time I knew I needed to get the hell out of there. I put the car in reverse and kicked up dust as I sped away. I didn't know what I was running from. If my thoughts were correct, the thing would be flying over me. Following my every move, I forgot about my crush. I started speeding back to town. And I was speeding. I was only 15 minutes out from the edge of town when I checked my tank. It was nearly empty. Before I could make excuses, I knew that the floating thing above me was responsible. It wanted me uncovered and defenseless out there in the pitch black. The ice cube feeling again. I felt my car start to rattle as I crossed the town line. But at least now there were street lights. Amazingly, I made it back to the gas station, but my car stopped. I had been cursing and sweating for the past 20 minutes. I wasn't going to get out of my car. No way. I woke up the next morning to the attendant tapping my windshield with a genuinely confused expression. I hesitantly stepped out of the car and looked up. Just a blue sky, nothing more. No floating object. I had the attendant fill my tank and headed home. Whatever had happened to me the night before was inexplicable, but I was just happy to be alive. Interestingly, I didn't feel like a loser anymore. Somehow, surviving that ordeal made me stand taller and feel more confident. Obviously, I never did make it to that party, but it never bothered me. I literally felt like a whole new person after that. I'm a police officer, and sometimes we see some unbelievable things, mostly of the human variety, but I do have a story that I thought your listeners might appreciate. I've never experienced anything paranormal before, and I don't scare easily, but the story I'm about to tell you is the strangest, creepiest thing that's ever happened to me. One night, my partner and I were on a dinner break in downtown Los Angeles, eating street tacos in our car. As we finished eating, we got a call from dispatch about a 911 emergency not too far from us. It was a 245 assault with a deadly weapon. The dispatcher told us that a terrified young woman called and said 2 men were trying to kill her, so we put on the flashing red and blues, turned on the siren, and rushed over to an industrial area. The neighborhood is a bit sketchy, made up of warehouses and buildings, some of which are abandoned. I admit it's a bit ominous at night and transients wander around, but they mostly keep to themselves. We arrived at an old 4-story brick building that looked like it hadn't been occupied in years. No one was around, no cars parked, nothing. We pulled out our flashlights and checked the front entrance, but the door was locked. Then we did a quick scan around the perimeter of the building, and that's when I thought I heard something coming from inside, up on the 4th floor. I shined my light on one of the windows, and I swear to God, I saw someone standing there. It looked like a woman, but it was hard to tell through the grimy glass. I called out to my partner, but when we looked back up, no one was there. Thinking this girl was in trouble and with no time to waste, we ran around to the front. This time we were surprised that we found it slightly ajar. We looked at each other confused because we were certain it was locked before. Not taking any chances, we drew our weapons and proceeded inside. The place was a mess, trash strewn everywhere, walls spray-painted with graffiti, stained mattresses and bedding, and the pungent smell of body odor, urine, and feces. Moments after we entered, we heard a blood-curdling scream coming from somewhere upstairs. We ran up to the 2nd floor and we could hear faint whimpering sounds, but it was hard to tell exactly where they were coming from. My partner and I split up to check the various rooms, but we found nothing. We heard the unmistakable sound of a woman crying, this time coming from the third floor. We bolted up the stairs, calling out to anyone that needed help, but we got no response. There was just the sound of crying. The third floor was dark with no signs of anyone. Again, my partner and I split up to investigate. I swore I heard crying coming from one of the rooms, but when I checked, no one was there. Then I heard it coming from a room across the hall, but when I looked, it was empty as well. I was getting frustrated and wondered if someone was pranking us. That's when I saw the silhouette of someone at the end of the hall. I shined my light, but the figure disappeared around a corner. I chased after it, calling for my partner, but when I rounded the corner, it led to another empty room. My partner caught up with me, and I told him what I saw, and he confirmed that he was hearing and seeing things too. A loud banging sound made me jump, followed by the sound of footsteps. It came from above us on the fourth floor. As we made our way cautiously to the stairwell, there was another scream, agonized like someone was being murdered. We sprinted up the stairs, weapons aimed, scanning the halls with our flashlights. We decided not to split up this time. We called out, but received no answer. We heard that scream again. There was just something about it that sent shivers up my spine. It was coming from a room down the hall. As we got closer, the screams became louder. It was a woman begging for her life. We burst into the room and the screaming abruptly stopped. It was empty. My partner and I looked at each other, confirming that it was this room we heard the sounds coming from. I walked to a dirty window and looked down below. This was the exact window where I thought I saw someone when I was outside. None of it made sense. We searched the room and it was clear no one had been here for quite some time. While other rooms had evidence of squatters, this one did not. As I stood there trying to wrap my head around the situation, we heard that horrifying, disembodied scream again. This time it was directly in my ear, as if someone was right next to me. It scared me so bad I nearly jumped through the ceiling. I looked at my partner and we both hightailed it out of there. We collected ourselves outside, but we didn't say anything. We just didn't have the words. I stopped a transient pushing a cart and asked if he had seen or heard anything. He said everyone knows to stay away from that building because it's haunted. Apparently a girl was killed there many years ago. I didn't do a good job of hiding how shook I was, and he noticed, laughing at me as he went on his way. My partner said not to tell anyone at the station, and half-jokingly mentioned that we should take a break from your stories for a bit. I said better yet, now we have something to share. I always thought that Bigfoot lived in the Pacific Northwest. I had never heard of a Bigfoot spotting in North Carolina, nor did I particularly believe in Bigfoot until I spotted one myself. I was camping with friends in Chimney Rock State Park, and I had headed off on a short solo hike to find a waterfall that had been in one of my favorite movies. I came to the top of a steep incline and the waterfall was below me. It was a beautiful scene, and I reached for my cell phone to take some pictures. But when I looked at the screen, there was something odd in the frame. I thought that I was looking at a bear, but something didn't seem quite right. I lowered my phone and looked back at the spot. There was a giant, hairy creature standing on two legs in the water below the falls. Its back was to me. It was stooped over, and when it stood up with a large fish in its hand. And that's when I realized what I was seeing. It was Bigfoot. There is no doubt in my mind. The creature was at least 7 feet tall. Every bit of it that I could see was covered in thick, dark hair. I froze in place when it turned around. I'm not sure if he smelled me, but I definitely smelled him. I was hit with what can only be described as a stench that was a mix of barnyard and roadkill. My cell phone slipped out of my hand and made a lot of noise as it bounced down the trail behind me, and his head jerked to the side toward me. I was wearing a bright yellow jacket, so I knew that it would see me, but I was rooted in place. We made eye contact for several seconds, and I knew that if I made a run for it, he would be on me in a flash. Suddenly, I heard some footsteps behind me. I whirled around, terrified that another Bigfoot was between me and escape. But to my surprise, I saw a forest ranger making his way toward me. He waved, called out a cheerful, "Good morning," but I was too scared to respond. I turned back to the water, but the creature was gone. The ranger looked concerned when he saw my expression. "Are you okay? Are you lost?" I tried to respond, but just stuttered big, big, big while gesturing vaguely toward the waterfall. "Ah," he said, "you spotted our friendly neighborhood bear." "No, I didn't see a bear. I saw it was big." I waved my hands in the air to try and show him how tall the creature was. "You definitely saw a bear," he said firmly. "Sometimes they stand up on their hind legs and they can look like other things. We keep the bear a secret around here. We don't want anyone showing up to hassle the bear. Too many bear hunters in these woods would ruin our peace and quiet, and it definitely won't end well for that bear. Do you understand what I'm saying?" I did. He knew what I saw. He wanted me to keep quiet about it. "Do you understand?" he asked again. I nodded. He nodded. "Okay," he said. "Enjoy the rest of your day." I headed back down the trail as quickly as I could, scooping up my cell phone on the way. The screen was cracked, but I didn't really care. It gave me an excuse that explained why I hadn't taken any photos at the waterfall. My friends bought the story of the bear hook, line, and sinker,